What's up, everybody? Thought we'd bang around with the low stakes P&E for giggles and shits here for a little bit. So I will be talking you through some like massive exploits for really low stakes. See if we can get some hands in 15 minutes. So, I'm gonna just try out 3x from the button here, expecting not to get 3-bet sufficiently for the larger size and potentially overcalled. And I never play 25 NL, so I'm just kind of be making up these exploits as I go along, but that's okay. I mean, you should be starting to think too about some things you can do that are different than Equilibrium that might make a little bit more money in practice than in theory. So here, for example, 2.5 from under the gun is a little bit big, but I don't really care because I don't expect to get 3-bet enough by any of the positions. And here, ace-jack offsuit would be a pretty low frequency 3-bet, but expecting not to get 4-bet enough, I'm just going to 3-bet it pure. Basically for value, a little bit of denial. And yeah, get it through. And going to be 3-betting here. And king 8 offsuit at this rake structure is probably a fold or a mix, but I'm just going to open it pure. Probably should have gone 3x, already kind of going back on my own policy. But yeah, so here we can probably start out with b50 on this board. I'm trying to decide if there is an exploit reason to go larger. I don't think so. I think we can start with this size, and if we go larger, we may get them to pure fold some of their weaker pocket pairs, but we also have a lot of fold equity versus those hands in later streets. On the turn here, I think we block ace queen of spades, which is a hand that they probably should float. And they're going to have hands like 9s and 10s that are going to, sorry, 9s and 8s that are full to that size. Not super happy to get called again, but probably would triple. And here with the king queen of hearts, doesn't really accomplish very much by betting. You could range bet these boards for simplification, but I think starting with a check with this hand is pretty reasonable. Yeah, it's just kind of like if you had a hand that was going to check, the highest no pair hand with a backdoor makes a lot of sense. And at this point, just going to check down. Probably going to call a large river bet if they place it. I'm not sure what to do against a small one. So this size seems less over bluffed to me. And the positions are very, very tight, like because I'm opening from the hijack. But we're going to flick in the call anyways, just because a lot of regs at these stakes are going to expect my double check range to be super duper capped, and they may just fire everything. And that's fine. They went very small with the trips there. Kind of strange sizing for them, to be honest. Only really a good size if they expect to get raised a lot. And I was actually planning to snap versus a larger size, partly because they're not going to go thin enough when they overbet the river. So here on the 7-4-4 two-tone board, you want to think about what your value would be if you were to bet. So if you go quarter pot, you're kind of betting your strong ace-x for value. And if you go larger, you're kind of repping more your overpair advantage. So we're going to start out with the check here. And versus a less or more mergey bet, I would be very tempted to check raise, but versus this bet, I think we can just let the hand go pretty easily, both in theory and practice. And I can't remember if the same player has been 3.4xing every time or if there's multiple players doing it, but I'm just kind of assuming this is like a 25 NL exploity thing, and I'm not going to assume that their range is like really polar when they 3.5 it or whatever. Like, I think I'm just gonna kind of treat it like a normal RFI where I'll raise my good hands. Mostly ISOing versus hands that have a lot of equity if we bet here any size, so I'm gonna check back. And yeah, I mean, we could be drawing dead here, to be honest, but we have pretty decent equity against against a set, and they could have a bluff like ace queen with a club or king queen, so we'll call. And river, I am pretty tempted to shove, even though I think in theory we're going to want to have something like king queen offsuit with a queen of clubs here, but just facing block river can't be too bad to attack it, so we're gonna go for the jam here. I just think that there's a lot of fold equity facing like they polarize turn and then they block river. Yeah, so I'll check back here because king 8-3 is not a great board for us. And then facing this really mergy bet on the turn, I'm just gonna raise massive. Expecting them to have bet their spades on the flop like almost all the time at 25 NL. And the point of this video is that I am doing things that are very, very out of line just to show you kind of what you can get away with when people don't know how to adjust on the fly and are making mistakes in a somewhat predictable fashion. So, you know, like just obvious things like their small sizes include mostly low equity hands. Their checking range is underprotected in a lot of spots, and also that even the regs are going to be exploiting in ways that are kind of formulaic, like just expecting most humans to be making the same mistakes. Like if you keep checking, they're gonna bet, and that sort of thing. And you kind of see like, yeah, people are thinking this way. You're seeing a lot of 3.5x, which is sort of interesting in these Zoom pools. Just sort of banking on the idea that players are not going to play enough kind of like 3-bet or fold from the big blind. They're not going to they're going to call too often. And so this is not dissimilar from the King Queen of Hearts hand, where if we placed a very, very small bet, it's almost for value. And if we place a larger bet, this hand doesn't make as much sense to do it with, because we would just have hands here like Jack 10 of diamonds or something, or Jack 10 of clubs that want to fold much more. But I don't know, just for funsies, we'll place a quarter pot bet and try to get called by like ace 6, ace 5, ace 8, ace 9, that kind of thing. And similar idea on the double Broadway board here. Gonna check back our hand now, and sometimes win versus those like ace X types of hands. Obviously losing to 5, 6s, pocket deuces, some 7x. And this is a pretty bad river, so you know, they had some 6-5 that got there. They have some other straight draws that improved. And yeah, I'm just gonna fold to what is a bet that feels a little bit more uncapped on this river, especially given that, you know, our raising range is like what here? Like, we're not really gonna have much 4x. We could have some pocket 8s, but even that is pretty unlikely. And you know, how much would it really be worth if we were to raise jacks here? Like, I don't know. Some players would even just call jacks there, I think so. Oops, went 2x instead of my 2.5 rule. Facing the limp here, it's kind of interesting what we do with Queen Deuce of Hearts. It's really just a question of how often we get squeezed. Like if we never ever get squeezed, it would be a super plus EV call with the Queen Deuce of Hearts. I'm gonna just decide that we're not getting squeezed all that often, and for the video, flicking a call here. And yeah, so here we're a little bit deeper, so we'll go a little bit larger with our 3-bet. And King 7 offsuit is a mix, but I'm not randomizing because I expect players to under 4-bet, so we over-realize our equity. And even with a polarized hand, that's always a good thing. I'm going to start out with a half pot bet here, leverage some 10x advantage, which is pretty typical of wide formation when you're the 3-better. Hands like Ace-10 offsuit can't defend for the small blind ever. On the turn, I think we're going to bet again and then decide river, probably jam an ace or a 9 on the river. Yeah. When we face the tiny min-click 3-bet, I mean, there's not really... You could play some... Like, sometimes here it's not bad, actually, to 4-bet pretty light for value, because sometimes they're kind of capped when they do this. Although what's complicated is that other times they're, like, just inducing with aces. I think most of the time this is a hand like 9s. So yeah, you could 4-bet, like, 10s or jacks here, and think it's for value a lot. And, yeah, just going to have to fold this hand, too bad. To continue. And we'll stop the video after these two hands. We might rejoin in a bit, but yeah. So 9-4-7 two-tone. Who is this board better for? If you think about it, it's pretty much, you know, it's kind of a neutral board slash better for the big blind. Like you would rather we run a different flop. And I think I'm probably going to check fold, but if they check a second time, bomb the river pure, just because I expect at that point they'll be very, very capped. And here we could consider raising, because it's possible, yeah, so we're just going to go like, let's go 18. Right, because how many flushes do they have, basically? Not too complicated, you know? If you bet a size that makes them mostly need to call flushes, then yeah. Cool. And that hand kind of shows that, you know, yeah, betting versus fish is good, but checking versus fish can be good too. Like, it's there's more than one way to win against fish. You just need to kind of understand what they're going to do in response to certain actions. They're going to misplay pretty much every spot, so we're going to 3-bet a little bit larger here because we are deep stacked, but then conversely not as large as normal because it's a cold 4-bet, so kind of in between, larger than a normal 4-bet out of position, but then also smaller than it would have been if it had not been a cold 4-bet. And this is the last hand we'll play. Cool. All right, I might kind of add to this video in a bit, but well, we'll play this one as well. Yeah, just fold this hand just to get my life over with. All right, take care for now. I may add to this in a second, but hopefully that was some stuff to think about. Cheers.